Hey there, guys. This is Flamzeron, aka YouTube's Tasuke. I kind of missed this when the news hit, um, like earlier last month, but I want to go ahead and talk about it now because it's actually involving a character and comic series and superhero and all that I would consider actually probably one of my favorites, at least him and Daredevil, and that's Marvel's Wolverine. Um, a new game that was announced for the PS5 by Sony Interactive Entertainment and Insomniac Games, the same people who made what I like to call Spider-Man PS4. I know it's technically called Marvel's Spider-Man, but I call it Spider-Man PS4 because I can. And because of that, the sequel to me will always be Spider-Man PS4 2. It's not Spider-Man PS5 or whatever. No, it's Spider-Man PS4 2. I don't care what they say. Um, we got a little teaser. Um, of it that didn't really show like any. I'm guessing that's probably in-game footage or at least like cutscene footage. It showed a Logan at a bar and some guy about to like hit him, and like you can see sort of like his claws start to come out. You can even see sort of like the blisters or like cuts or whatever, scabs if you will, on his knuckles of where the claws come out, um, which is interesting. And of course, I'm using I'll have the Gematsu link as well, which brings me to my next point about this game apparently having emotional narrative and cutting edge gameplay. For me, the gameplay part in particular is pretty important. The story of Wolverine, there's a lot of different stuff you can take from the comics and whatnot. I've been wanting to kind of actually read some Wolverine comics because even though I would consider Wolverine probably my favorite superhero, definitely my favorite X-Men, like by far my favorite X-Men. Um, if not Wolverine, Daredevil is up there as well. I really like him, and I've actually read his comics. So thanks to my buddy Troy for getting me uh, three actually. Frank Miller Daredevil comics. Thank you, buddy. Um, but Wolverine mainly just through the cartoon and the different forms of media, and of course the movies, which Wolverine being my favorite superhero, I've been trying to kind of find a good Wolverine game to kind of have that experience. And from what I've gathered, there are really kind of two games, and there's kind of a point to this. But two games kind of come to mind as far as being sort of what I would want. The first one, which is the more recent game, I think it's literally just called X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's named after the movie, and a lot of people consider that game to be better than the movie. I think it's rated M. It's a pretty gory game, but a lot of people really like the gameplay. It even has Hugh Jackman doing the voice of Wolverine, so that's cool. And you got the different costumes and whatnot. So I'm kind of intrigued by that one. I do kind of like a sort of like that modern take on Wolverine, to where it's like he doesn't really have a costume and whatnot. I do kind of like that look, to where it's just like, the tank top and the jeans and the dog tag without like any mask or whatnot. But he pulls out his claws and he's like slashing stuff up. I actually have a figure. That motorcycle Wolverine, sort of like, what do you call it, set bundle that Marvel Legends did a while back. I actually have that. But that's one game that kind of comes into mind. That one I might maybe try and give it a try. It might be on my game. I'm gonna have to take a look and see. I might put it on there later on just to make sure. Hey, I want to make sure I get it. Um, but yeah, I definitely want to give this game a try, because I guess for those of you who didn't get a chance to see my uh, community post, I actually have a PS5 now. Yep, I got lucky during one of the Walmart restocks, so that's another reason why I wanted to cover this in particular. I wanted to let everyone know, like, hey, I've got a PS5. I can play stuff now. I've been playing Demon Souls a little bit, besides the other stuff that I've been playing, like Arise, and which that review will be coming eventually. I'm working on it, but that's gonna. Y'all know me with my Tales. I tend to take a very long time making Tales things, and my videos tend to be very long on the Tales things, even though that one has an actual technical script, in quotes. But anyway, that was the first game to kind of get back on track. And the second game, it's called, I think, X2 Wolverine's Revenge for the PS2 and whatnot. That one's kind of interesting because it has Mark Hamill doing the voice of Wolverine, which is interesting. Decent casting, and I've heard a little bit of it. From what I've seen, it seems to be kind of because for me, here's my thing with superhero games. I grew up playing what I call Spider-Man PS1, that the Neversoft Spider-Man game. I really love that game. That was really fun. I have it both on the PS1 and on the N64, and I've got the sequel as well. To me, that's sort of like my ideal superhero game. I want something that isn't necessarily based on any movies. I want something that has, a gallery so you can read about the different characters, some like Easter eggs with like some comic stuff, different costumes sort of representing the different eras of the characters, of the character in particular, like in this case Spider-Man and all that. That's kind of what I want, and I know that Marvel's Spider-Man kind of does that for Spider-Man, at least for the time being. Troy actually got me that game as well. Thank you, Troy. um, so I'll have to give that a try soon. But as far as Wolverine, that's kind of truthfully what I want. And it seems like X2 Wolverine's Revenge kind of does more of what I'm looking for. It even has like a unused Spider-Man cutscene, like a cameo of Spider-Man, which made me kind of wonder if it was made by the same people. I don't think it is. I don't think it's a Neversoft game, but it definitely seems to be in kind of like that same vein. And there's also the Spawn game on PS2, for example. Like there are a lot of sort of or not a lot, but there are a handful of comic book superhero games that kind of, to me, have that same spirit. Even though I haven't really played too many of them, like I've only played a little bit of the Spawn game. And of course, Spawn is sort of like a different kind of superhero altogether than Wolverine. But yeah, so for me, if we're talking about the news tagline, emotional narrative and cutting edge gameplay, to me, the cutting edge gameplay I think needs to maybe put more in terms of like beyond just the criteria of what I'm looking for in a Wolverine game. I'd say what's the more important of the two? I'd say maybe the gameplay, just because Wolverine stories are great, but he's a very sort of like brutal, sort of like combat-y sort of character. So like you definitely want the gameplay to be real fun. You don't want the combat to be too floaty. And I feel like there have been a number of superhero games that have maybe had a little too, or really just sort of action adventure kind of games that seem to have kind of floaty combat. So I feel like this one they really want to maybe tighten it up, and I'm sure they will. And I'm actually kind of glad that we are in fact getting another Wolverine game like this, and I'll be interested to kind of see what sort of storyline they take. I'm interested right now as far as, because the whole like his time in Japan thing, because I saw the Wolverine, I saw that movie, and I've got my eye on I think that's also a Frank Miller comic if I'm not mistaken. I'm kind of interested in that as well. And another one I want to maybe read is Old Man Logan, because I saw Logan as well. And Savage Wolverine, I'm kind of, because I have the first issue of that, because I got that at a comic book store when I went with Troy, comic book buddy, for their free comic book day. I know that's what you do when you go to free comic book day. You buy comics. Of course, like in that situation, like, well, because like I wanted, like, well, I want that one. It's like, well, it's not the free one, but you can buy it. It's like, okay, I will. So yeah, just kind of wanted to sort of talk about this a little bit. Like I said, kind of what I'm looking for is something that's sort of like an homage to, or not necessarily an homage, but something that definitely like, what's the word? Celebrates the character in the comic and the history and whatnot, both in the different costumes. Like there should be like, you should have like the tiger stripe costume, the new age sort of like costume that looks like the tiger stripe costume, but it's like more slim and streamlined. The orange and brown costume, the X-Men Ultimate costume to where he's wearing just black and doesn't have a mask. The movie costume where it's like the sort of what I call battle armor, sort of like military outfit, which I'm actually not a big fan of that on any of the comic book characters, because it looks too, one, I think it looks too realistic, which I know that's going to sound weird, but to me, like, I'm really fond of like 90s comics and superheroes. That's sort of my era, to where like not everything, there was a lot more spandex and like more less durable material in the costumes. That's kind of what I like to see. So that story, I don't know. I assume it's going to be an original story. Um, I guess I mean they'll obviously take from the storylines in the comics, but I do kind of hope it is an original story because I feel like with these video games, this is sort of a chance to sort of make make a new standard for superhero games because historically most superhero games are actually not that good. Um, it's a lot of them like with the exception of Spider-Man PS4, the Batman Arkham games, um, and different other stuff. Maximum Carnage is a pretty decent game, and a few others. I actually really liked War of the Gems. That's a decent one. It's a Capcom beat 'em up. But anyway, uh, so I feel like this is sort of a chance for them to kind of set a new standard, or rather maintain the standard, because it's kind of weird how I feel like DC kind of does better with everything but the movies. I like some of the movies, but I don't know. I think it works when they just kind of do their own thing. I think as long as they kind of do their own thing, they'll be fine. And it seems like even the MCU is starting to kind of taper off a little bit, which I think just kind of speaks volumes about kind of where it was going. But I'm kind of just talking out my butt right now. I feel like I'm just saying a bunch of nonsense that people in the comments are going to be like, "You're wrong, dude." Admittedly, I'm not a huge superhero guy. I do like them, and I do enjoy, the stories and whatnot. But I don't necessarily go out of my way to follow superhero stuff unless it's something like this with Wolverine, or Daredevil even, or I try to follow Spider-Man because I grew up with Spider-Man, and Batman I have sort of like a small eyeball on just because like Spider-Man I grew up with Batman, but Wolverine definitely one of my favorites, so I try to kind of keep up with him as much as I can. So, but yeah, definitely the celebration of the character with the costumes and different Easter eggs and like gallery pieces where like, oh yeah, here's a cover of issue whatever of Wolverine that featured this thing that's been a mainstay in his character for a long time. I would prefer an original story, and then the combat needs to be really, really good because you're going to be fighting a lot. You need, and I think it'd be cool if they maybe throw in a mode to where it's just fighting. And I think X-Men Origins Wolverine, the game, had that feature to where you just slash people up and stuff. I think actually the PS3 and 360 versions and PC version were actually the quote-unquote unrated version. I think the PS2 version is like the censored version, so I'll have to track down the PS3 version if I can find it. I want to try that in Web of Shadows. Web of Shadows, and that game also has Wolverine, and it has a venomized version of Wolverine, so that's cool. Oh, they should do a figure of that one. I'm waiting for a figure of venomized Wolverine and Halloween Jack, and a more comic accurate Gamora, and then I'll be satisfied. But I really want Halloween Jack. I want to rebuild that part of my collection. Well, I should put Halloween Jack. I don't think Wolverine knows anything about Halloween Jack. For those of you who don't know, Halloween Jack is probably the most obscure Marvel character I know because I had a toy of him back in the day. He's technically Loki. I know nothing about his character besides just the little bits that I've looked up. That'd be cool. I imagine they'll probably throw in Sabretooth. Maybe there'll be an X-23 cameo. Steve Blum will probably do his voice, which makes sense considering he's like the standard Wolverine. He's a good Wolverine. I'd say voiceover-wise, I'd say my favorite Wolverine was probably Scott McNeil in X-Men Evolution. I think he was probably the best sounding Wolverine in my opinion, but Steve Blum also does a good job of capturing, the essence of the character, I think. There's actually apparently going to be a revival of that old cartoon where that voice kind of set the standard for Wolverine, so that'll be interesting to hear. But anyway, so yeah, I think combat definitely needs to be, and I think most people would probably agree that like for a Wolverine game with how much physical violence he causes on people and how violent and how he kills people and shit, you want that battle system to be pretty fun, like borderline Devil May Cry levels, I think, which maybe they will. Who knows? It might be a little floaty. I'm saying that just because I feel like sort of like I want to be this, but it more than likely will be that. So we'll see. But overall, seems kind of interesting. We don't know hardly anything about it. I'm recording this on the 17th of November. The Game Awards are in December, so maybe we'll get more information. We did actually get some information on another comic book franchise game that I'm going to talk about. I'm actually recording 3 videos back to back. Technically 4 if I have time to do the 4th one, but that 4th one's actually going to be a little more... that one might be longer than the other ones, and you'll see why, but trying to kind of make some time for some videos. I know this one's kind of rambly, so I think I'm going to shut up now and move on to the next topic. But yeah, overall this game looks pretty fun. It's definitely made me glad that I actually have a PS5 now, so I'll be able to play it. And, yeah, I'll be sure to play it and talk about it whenever it comes out. But yeah, looks pretty fun, or I hope it's fun. This is Flames Tasuke signing out. See you later.